Hi, and welcome to How I Became a Perfumer podcast. In each episode, we explore the different roles in the flavor and fragrance industry, as well as talk to founders of independent projects. My name is Tanya. I'm a career coach dedicated to helping you sniff out the best opportunities and inspiring you to create your own projects. If you got stuck and looking to make a career shift or start something new, don't hesitate to book a session with me. And let's get started. My guest for the today's episode is Dr. Matthias Vey, Vice President of Scientific Affairs at IFRA, the International Fragrance Association. Dr. Vey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you, and likewise. I would like to start with a very uncommon thing for, I believe, a person who has a very strong, as I've said, scientific background. Apart from that, you have a very strong, I believe, perfumery background, as you've also said, you're a really crazy perfume lover and have even, I believe, a formal training. Is that all correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I have to say I was always in love with fragrance, and I think that maybe also determined my career a little bit. Even so, I started to become a chemist. So I did chemistry training. I went to university. In between, after the first part of the studies, I stopped and I wanted to discover other opportunities and actually started a perfumery training with a smaller company in Germany. And I completed this training. Unfortunately, there was an opportunity to continue working as a perfumer.
Hey.
So I went back to university, I finished my thesis, but I think this love to fragrance has always been there.
Wow. I didn't know these details, and it's a little bit even dramatic. I mean, the fact that you haven't found the opportunity at that time, but I don't feel that you are regretting it at all.
No, I would say I'm not regretting. It's always, it helps you find your path, and it helped me, and still I think it helps me today in my work that I made this experience, and I think it helps me to understand the perfumers and their needs better. And our work impacts their life and their ability to work. So feeling a little bit their pain, if I'm allowed to say, does help me in finding the right way of communicating with them, expressing their needs, why certain things have to be done the way they have to be done, and understanding why it's sometimes difficult for them to understand the rationale, the background, why are these things happening, why are these restrictions on their beloved materials coming forward. So I think with this own background, it provides me the ability to better and easier communicate with them.
Well, that sounds very good to me because, frankly, I've heard a lot of people who are kind of far from perfumery, like, I don't know, like perfume collectors. And these people generally hate IFRA for restricting their favorite materials. But the thing that you said that you could have a lot of empathy to perfumers and understand their needs. And this is, I believe, very important. And this is something I also think a lot of those perfumery collectors or perfumistas, they just totally miss. That people who work in IFRA, they do understand the feelings of all the sides involved.
I would agree. I think if I look at my colleagues, we're all fragrance aficionados. We really all love fragrance. And to a certain extent, I think it's a basic requirement to work in this industry, or it comes maybe natural. Only people who really have a link to the world of perfumery get engaged, and certainly the work we do is not the one that to the outside world pushes creativity. It's not the fascinating and glamorous part of the fragrance business, but I think it is essential because it helps that the products we bring in the market, or our members bring into the market, the perfumers create, are safe, and nowadays even safe and sustainable for the users. So, and that should be a given, but it's the underlying work. It's the groundwork that needs to be done. And if it's not understood that way, then I understand that some people don't really appreciate immediately what we're doing, but it might be because they miss the deeper insight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And talking about your work, I understand that maybe it's just a very different episode to talk about all the aspects which IFRA does. But for those who maybe just, an elevator pitch, people have no idea what you're doing. We've been already talking about it for 10 minutes and they're still like, what is that? What are they doing there? Could you please give us a small insight into that?
Yes, with pleasure. And you might believe I do have these elevator discussions sometimes. People ask me, what are you doing? What is IFRA and what are you doing there? So I think part of why it's not so well known is because, first of all, the fragrance industry is not really that much visible to the consumers. So we are active in the B2B sector. Our members are producing and creating fragrance that they typically sell to consumer product manufacturers. And what we at IFRA are doing, and that's the case since we were created, and that is actually now 50 years. So we just celebrated last year our 50th anniversary. And the start of the association was to set standards that ensure that the fragrance ingredients can be safely used. And safe in this context means safe for the consumer, so human health aspects, but also safe from the environment, which was there from the beginning. And maybe 50 years ago, actually quite innovative in taking that also into consideration. So we look at the safe use of materials as a center element of our activity, but that has evolved over the years.
Uh-huh. How many people do this job for us?
We are a relatively small association, but we are also unique in the sense that we are global. So we have in Brussels, where we have our headquarters, a team of about 10. But we do have staff in the Latin American region. We have staff in the Asia Pacific region. We even have a staff member in India because of the ever-increasing relevance of India as a sourcing hub for the fragrance industry. But overall, for an association that works on a global scale, I think our team is relatively small.
If there are around 15 or so people working there, it's just a very, not surprisingly that you are very busy there.
I think what helps us, and that's also the typical way a trade association works, but I think for our trade association it's even more relevant. We certainly rely on our members, so we rely on their expertise. We very often, let's call it, we build the framework, we set the frame, we provide the platform, but then we much depend on the expertise and knowledge that our members bring into the association work. Without them, we couldn't deliver, we couldn't exist. And that's part of the activities we have and part of the challenges that we face every day, that we keep the dialogue with our members, that we allow them to exchange with us, that we learn from them, and that we transform this information then into our daily work, into our advocacy messages, and into what we then bring to the outside world as kind of face for the fragrance industry.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that recently a few smaller companies I've been following, they also joined IFRA. I mean, previously it was, in my mind, in my head, it was mostly the big flavor and fragrance houses who were members. And it seems now that even smaller companies feel, really small companies, fragrance producers who have one shop probably in London, they also want to join you. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I think both is true. One element is that certainly maybe to the outside world, what visible is our, what we call the direct members, multinational companies. But I think what's also important is that companies, and specifically SMEs, are members through our national associations. And actually, the membership for national associations within IFRA is free of charge. And that allows all these small companies that are organized in national associations to join us. And if there is no national association, they can even become supporting member for a really, really small fee. But where you are right, I think there is even more tendency now for really small business, let's call them one man or one women shops or groups, enterprises, to become engaged because they are facing an ever-increasing challenge in actually running their businesses. And that's not IFRA's impact. It's partly also the rules that we set out there, but it's also the ever-increasing regulatory challenges. And that's a second aspect that we as a trade association provide. We not only set own rules for our industry to lift their performance, but we help them manage and understand regulation they have to deal with to actually get into the business.
Yeah, right. I just remember, like every small, or maybe not, perfumer has their own Excel with a lot of, which counts automatically if everything is fine or not. And I believe it's very good that you probably provide them support in that, because I remember having this kind of software and I needed to put things when I was studying manually. I needed to put their formulas, all that kind of stuff, and it should have been calculating whether I'm still within the the legal framework of using things or not. And oh my God, it was so within the regulatory framework, of course. But it was tough. It was indeed very tough, and I believe this support means a lot to these small companies.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's also an area where eventually we, as an industry, will benefit from new technologies also. I know these calculation programs are very sophisticated, and I have a lot of hope actually these days that artificial intelligence, which is such a hot topic these days, will also help us here. I think there's a lot of opportunities in having intelligent programs that take a lot of the non-creative work away from the perfumers and from the creative people and let them really, in this remaining space of creativity, do what they are supposed to do. Be creative, come forward with new products, new ideas. So I have a lot of hope in AI, and that's definitely an application where there shouldn't be any debate whether or not it's useful.
I couldn't support you more. Right now my heart is really, if I could make these heart smiles, I would be doing that. No, really, I really support what you're saying. As somebody who uses these products daily, I believe it's the next big move, and avoiding it is just hindering your own progress. That's what I could say. We already know a little bit about IFRA. We know also that you have regional offices. I found out that you also have events internationally. If you could tell us a little bit about the events in general, what they represent and who should participate in them, who are they for, I would be very happy.
Yes, with pleasure. Let's maybe start indeed with the Global Fragrance Summit, which is something that we introduced only about 4 to 5 years ago, but with a lot of positive feedback, because it allowed us to get out there and explain to the members, but also the not members, because it's an open event, explain what we do. And that comes back partly to what I mentioned before, that many people don't really understand what we do, what is our key activities, what's our aim, what's driving us, what's pushing us, but also broadening the scope of our activities beyond in principle, just setting rules for the industry, which is one aspect still important, but there's so much more. And it allows us to get in direct contact with the people for whom we work. And it's a great opportunity then to meet perfumers, to meet creative people, to meet business people, because in the daily environment, they are not really our first contact. We are typically engaged with the toxicologist, with the regulatory experts, but it's fantastic to meet the full spectrum of the industry. And I think that's what the Global Fragrance Summit is sought to deliver.
Oh, that's perfect. Are the locations different each year, I believe? Because I remember it was even online one of the years, I believe in the Corona year or so.
Yeah, we plan, and it's reflecting that we are an international association. We plan to have the Global Fragrance Summit always in a different region. So reaching out to the local people, to the local engaged people. We had it once in LATAM, in Sao Paulo. We had to run one, unfortunately, during COVID, as you already mentioned, fully virtually. The idea still is to have it in person. We do allow online participation, but honestly, I think it's one of these type of events where the benefit comes from being there and meeting the people and having the conversations outside the official event. So in the coffee breaks, that's what delivers. But again, we try to be also reflecting our global nature. So we're moving the region. We had it in Europe. We had it in Latin America. We wanted to have it in Singapore. That turned out to become the virtual one. And now it's in the Arabic region, which is also from a perfumery aspect very fascinating.
Indeed, indeed. And, I so like the way you think and also what you've said about the industry and the way people really connect. I believe Janet Turley, managing editor of Perfume and Flavors Plus, said in one of the episodes that this is so much a double kiss industry, like cheek to cheek, and you have to really connect. And that's when things really start happening. To the opposite, what you've said, like, oh, unfortunately, we had a virtual event, and for many people, it was maybe not that unfortunate. But I really think that we need these connection points in our industry much more than we have probably even now.
Yes, I fully agree. I mean, we all benefit from the online meeting tools that we have. And I think we all took maybe the best out of the COVID times, learning that there is opportunities to connect over distances that have not existed before. I think COVID maybe pushed the technology on this side forward, which was great, from which we still benefit. But you need to find a healthy balance. As usual, as in so many areas, it's always a balance that is the best thing to aim for. And here, I think that some events perfectly work online only, and we have a lot of our committees meeting online only because we have people from Japan, from Latin America, from the United States and Europe trying to meet at the same time. There's all these travel costs involved. There's also the environmental aspect. You don't want to put people all the time in airplanes flying around the world. But then there are some events where nothing is better than being in the same room and exchanging face to face.
Oh yeah, there is always more than one way of seeing and of looking at it. You've mentioned balance, and you're a vice president. So how do you manage your time and your work with your life? Is there a life for a vice president of such an impactful organization?
Yes, it's a challenge. I love my work, and certainly you always have to be careful that you that you keep your private space, that you protect it. But I have so many additional interests and things that fascinate me. beyond fragrance, that they take their space. For example, I love classical music. I'm totally a fan of opera and classical music, and that's the area that automatically gets the space it needs. I do my when I travel, I always try to see, is there anything happening? Can I go to a concert hall or an opera? And when we go on vacation, it's not rare that we combine it with a visit of an opera house we haven't seen yet. So I think that's for me a balance which I manage. And it's just because the other area that interests me is also, I'm so much in love with, like I'm with my work, that automatically it balances out.
Well, that's perfect. You said that, in the industry, in this industry, you previously mentioned, like, we love perfumes, we really do. And I hope one of the biggest hopes is I coach people in different industries, that in every industry, a person would love their primary subject of their work, I would say. Because it's just impossible that in some industries people love it and in other industries people do what then? So yeah, I believe it's very it's so good to balance things when you have the opportunity to be in love with all the aspects of what you're doing, or at least with many aspects of what you're doing. My next question is again about you being a vice president, so making probably a lot of decisions, or at least having conversations on them. You said that you're a very small team, but you probably receive a lot of applications from people who want to join IFRA. So I have really, really very slightest idea about how things work in that regard. But do you often look for new talents, or it is like not very open right now for them to be applying that much? So maybe you could comment on that for me.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, we are a very multidisciplinary team. So we need a lot of different types of expertise, knowledge. And even so we are a small team, actually we cover quite broad variety of expertise. We have toxicologists, we have regulatory experts. I'm a chemist by training. We have environmentally educated people. We have lawyers. We have communication experts. Because we need to cover all these areas in our work. Because in the end, we have to bring all these knots together. When we are faced with issues, it's typically not just only a scientific challenge or not just only a regulatory challenge. So we need to bring all these elements together. We typically work in teams, also inside IFRA, where we then combine the necessary expertise. So whoever feels that he or she would like to work in such an environment, we are always looking for talents. Maybe we can even find a way to have people join us for a limited time, so they also understand what happens. And we get applications. Maybe not as many as you would imagine, which is still true to the fact that many people don't know us. Inside the industry, yes. Outside the industry, I think it's more easy to understand the big brands, but who really knows that there is an industry behind, that there is a creative industry behind, and who knows that this is represented by a trade association? So again, I think inside the business area, we are well known. If I would go on the street and ask a typical consumer, what do you know about IFRA? They wouldn't know. And it's natural.
Well, that's true. Well, thank you for that comment. I was pretty sure that you do receive a lot of applications and a lot of people want to join you. I believe after this episode, probably even more. If you could tell us how your maybe typical working day, I believe there is no typical working days, but if you could imagine a typical working day of someone at IFRA, or maybe yours particularly, how would you describe it?
Yeah, a typical working day for us is definitely very often away and apart from routine. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. So, as anybody else, the routine aspect, you look into your emails first. But then you will be confronted with questions, with topics that people bring to your attention you were not expecting. So it's always challenging. It's always new what's exposed to us. The other typical day for us is, and I mentioned that earlier, is we are permanently bringing people together. So we have meetings all the time. I think it's 50% of what we are doing, having our own task force meetings or attending to conferences or organizing meetings with regulators when we have specific topics to discuss. So having meetings or a day without meetings is very rare. So, or you're already planning for the next meeting. So I think that's a typical day of doing your routine job, checking the incoming news, managing meetings, preparing meetings, and then working on solutions for the new questions you have received. And again, there's always something that you were not expecting.
Wow. I like the part when you're receiving questions which you're not expecting. This is lovely. As somebody who likes to ask questions, I could totally support this idea. Well, what I wanted to ask you before we go to the next section, which is a Blitz section, and I have a few tricky questions for you there, is what are maybe the next big things which you're planning in your work? Because we know that there are events, a lot of communication work, and maybe, I don't know, there are some new initiatives or new books coming, because we will definitely leave a link to a book which you've made with Ne. It's a wonderful one. So maybe there is something you want to share about your future plans. Maybe not.
Yes, I'm more than happy, actually. We do maintain a separate project, even if it's 100% financed by us, which is called IDEA. It's the International Dialogue on the Evaluation of Allergens. And that's a project that's very close to my heart, that we have been maintaining now since more than 10 years. And it is actually a multi-stakeholder dialogue project where we bring broad expertise together from people who would typically not talk to us, if I would say so. So we really want to address health issues related, and it's focused on skin allergy, which is a topic that is relevant for the industry. Some of our materials are allergens. They have always been. We can manage them, but we need to understand all the details of the process, how this management works best. And we also want to keep an eye on the clinical situation. What's happening with the dermatologists? What do they see? And that's the cornerstone of IDEA, where we have these people come together. And one of the projects we have developed there, and that's currently really these days finding its way to life, is we have set up a network of dermatologists with whom we do a joint clinical study on fragrance ingredients. And I'm totally fascinated with that. It's one of my projects. We just had a workshop 2 weeks ago where we brought all the researchers together, and we were looking jointly on the protocol and on the way we want to investigate the patients. So this is fascinating, and we will communicate broader about this in the coming future.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I believe the results of this project will be also used for other aspects of your work, I suppose.
Absolutely. These clinical data are very important. They are to a certain extent describing the issue we have to face, we have to risk assess, and on which we have to risk manage. But they can describe that we found a solution. I mean, when patient reactions are reduced, when there is less people becoming allergic, it's the best indicator that the interventions you did are actually effective. And that's why it's so important to work close together with the dermatologists.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I hope you will have enough resources just to cover all that, because I believe this one is huge. I feel it.
It's a big exercise. It's a costly project, but it was I was very happy to see that our board, which is the group that also decides on the budget, was supportive from the beginning and saw the value of doing this.
That's perfect. Really, really, truly appreciate it. Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Vey. I would like to ask you a few tricky blitz questions. You could take as much time as you need, in fact, to think about it, but if the answer comes to you immediately, please don't hesitate to give it right away. So, what is the first scent that made an impact on you?
It was a perfume, and I'm not sure I can name. Well, I'm naming the brand here. It was a perfume from Chanel, Anteos. I was 14, 15 years old. I could hardly afford to buy it. And I'm still completely in love with it. And I can't really tell you why. I think it was the animalic aspect it has. Very impressive, you are leaving an impression on yourself, and you are leaving an impression on the outside world. So that's immediately the smell, the perfume that comes to my mind.
Well, have you bought it afterwards, I believe?
I still buy it today.
Well, interesting. If I meet you at some of the events, I will be guessing and will be trying to find out which one. The tricky one. If there was one material which is already banned by IFRA to some extent or fully, but you could still return it to the perfumer's palette, like you have a magic wand and now it's totally safe, what would that be?
I think if we could, it would be. It's a kind of a family, but it's the nitro musks. They unfortunately had a very, very bad environmental profile, but from a perfumery aspect, and I think that made the heart of many perfumers bleed. They were spectacular in the performance, the way they smell, but also the way they support the whole fragrance. They make it stay, but also to give the richness. So yes, if we could find a way to bring them back, I would love to.
Yeah, I really hope that it's possible to do with other ways, like to invent something similar, but extremely much more sustainable, etc. And yeah, on the side note, I remember one of my teachers, a former Givaudan perfumer, he was in laundry and fabric care mostly. He was saying to me, like, we have been using these nitro masks for years, and then they were banned and we didn't know what to do. And yeah, that's, I believe, how people felt. But yeah, anyways, one scientific breakthrough in fragrances which you admire, if there is any, in fact.
Oh, that's a good question. I think there is maybe two. One is more a technology that is developed, I think, jointly between our industry and the customer industry, which is encapsulation, which found ways of time-delayed delivery of the scent. I think that's a fantastic technology that, in all its aspects, helped performance of fragrances a lot. And I'm coming back to earlier, I'm really looking forward to the ways artificial intelligence tools will support our work. But that's something for the near or long-term future. But I'm very curious. I'm very interested to see what help we can find in our area.
Well, that's a great answer. Thank you. Well, best career advice you've ever received personally for yourself?
do whatever you want to do. Don't listen to others. Follow your heart. It sounds maybe a bit pathetic, but don't follow the advice of others. You know yourself what's best. I mean, I'm always asking advice, but then in the end, I follow my own feelings, and that has never misguided me. I think that's why I'm happy with where I am today. We discussed before, I initially wanted to become a perfumer. It didn't work out, but I found other ways that made me completely happy, and I was listening to my inner voice. So that's the best advice I can provide.
Well, that's perfect. I allow it. Well, talking about happiness, I have a question which I don't have in the list. Your favorite opera, or few of them, because I believe it might be tough.
Thanks for this question. I'm delighted to answer it, and it's very easy. I love operas of Richard Wagner. I'm sorry, maybe it's because I'm German.
Yeah.
And my my absolute I'm always switching, but I think my absolute favorite in the end is Tristan and Isolde, which is the most beautiful love story on the planet, at least for me. And it also shows one of my personality aspects. I think it's as full of emotion as it can be. It's actually pushing the emotions over the border, and I love it.
Well, I believe it was a great answer. And well, thank you, Matthias, for coming to our podcast.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.